Hey class, this is my business continuity plan research paper and presentation, and what I researched for it was a company in India called Computer Age Management Systems. So, with that said, let's get into the details about all about CAMs, who they are, what happened, how they reacted, what could have gone wrong, and what they did. First of all, Computer Age Management Systems, or CAMS for short, is an enormous transfer agency based in Chennai, India. What they do is that they're basically a middleman for companies, and if you don't know what that is, well, they are the middleman in the transaction, which means they handle a lot of important information and a lot of money. Well, they've been around for about 30 years. They were founded in 1988, and they hadn't really experienced any problems or interruptions until recently. Well, what did they go through? Recently, something happened that isn't super normal for the area of Chennai. They got some super heavy rain, which resulted in a flood, and this happened back in late 2015, November, December. Majority of the companies in the Chennai area were significantly affected by this disaster, but not computer age management systems. Well, how did they stay afloat? How were so many other companies impacted so heavily, but CAMS wasn't? They didn't have a secret weapon. They didn't have a mobile office. They didn't have smarter people. Well, I guess they kind of did. They had something called a business continuity plan, a BCP for short. Sure, most other companies probably had one too, but whether they practiced it or not is the deciding factor if it would be helpful to help them during this time. CAMS was one of the companies that enforced workers, managers, and all of their operating officers to know how to utilize their BCP. Their own CIO said the reasons why the company's business and operations remained undisrupted were mainly because staff's tremendous commitment to the BCP. They're constantly doing drills which involve shutting down part of their services and running it at one of their alternate sites. Sometimes they have hiccups, but of course it is better during an exercise or drill than during an actual event. Not only were their employees ready, but all their data is backed up actually at 3 other locations. They even have generators on hand so that they can keep electricity going. They have extra fuel for those generators to keep those generators going. And they have a bunch of backup service providers so that they don't lose connection to their customers or other coworkers. Well, what would happen if they didn't have a plan? To say the least, a lot of things definitely could have gone wrong. They deal with nearly 60% of the funds in the industry, and if CAMS was impacted more by this event, without using their BCP, the negative results could have been pretty significant. I did some further research and found an article from Autumn Botson that gave 4 risks of not having any kind of BCP at all, and it shows why having one is important other than helping during times of business interruption. The first and most obvious risk is that apparently it is unlawful to not have some kind of plan in case something that happens that might keep a business from functioning. Obviously, you want to follow the law. The second reason being that customers expect a business to be able to work with or fix disruptions as soon as possible. Of course, customers don't like being delayed services that they're paying for, these services that CAMS offers are very important to keeping businesses working. So her third point was basically that if you don't have one, you're just playing with fire. It's straight up silly to not have one. The cost of the amount of time to put into one is always cheaper than the loss during disaster, unless, of course, the disaster is very tiny. In other words, the opportunity cost of making one is cheaper than the opportunity cost of not making one. Lastly, a company should want one because not having one basically just sets yourself up for losing a lot of finances during some kind of disaster. As you can see, having this BCP really softened the blow from this flood for CAMS, unlike other companies that did lose a lot more. For the future, CAMS is buckling down. They've set up a pretty big new office location in another city called Coimbatore, that's the city, which of course is going to have a pretty strong, if not stronger, business continuity plan. They're ready for anything, if anything does come along, or if anything worse comes along than past events. With that said, maybe more companies will look at CAMS and follow in their footsteps and have a BCP, or have employees that listen and follow the BCP just like they did, because it worked out pretty well for them. And that's why having a business continuity plan is super helpful.